The sun doesn't rise for you, it rises for them. For the Spartans, dawn is the first moment of glory, when boys in the Agoge lace their sandals and touch their blades in prayer. But for you, a Helot, dawn means another day of silence, of sweat that won't be remembered. The fields outside Amyclae are thirsty. Your hands are cracked, not from battle, but from the stone jars you carry uphill over and over. You know how many paces it takes to reach the cistern blindfolded. You know how to keep your back to the wind so the overseer doesn't see you pause. You know not to speak. The boy in red, a Spartan, watches you from the road. He is younger than you, but he carries a stick like a sword. Someday he might carry a real one. Someday it might find your ribs. But not today. Today you endure. This is not a story of kings or conquests. This is the story of a boy named Tharon, and the world beneath the Spartan shield. The world of the Helot begins not with waking, but with listening. Before eyes open, the ears must confirm safety. No footsteps in the dirt, no creak of a hut door swinging open uninvited. No sudden silence. In Amyclae, silence is what frightens most. Tharon stirs on a mat of flattened reeds. His mother is already up, her loom clicking softly in the next room. The scent of boiled chicory root hangs in the air, a bitter drink to start another day in service. The cistern is nearly dry. He doesn't need to check. He knows by the way the ground pulls at his steps, how the mud has turned from tacky to dust. He lifts the heavy jars without complaint. They aren't empty, they're waiting, and so is he. The walk to the village cistern is measured, exactly 273 paces. He could do it blindfolded, has done, in fact, on a dare when he was younger. A boy named Helot tied a strip of cloth over Tharon's eyes and counted aloud as he walked. He laughed when Tharon stumbled. Helot disappeared the next spring. The road cuts past the olive groves, where Tharon and others harvest under the eye of Eudoros, the Spartan steward. Eudoros never speaks. He carries a staff, not to strike, but as a reminder. When a Helot bends too slowly or speaks too loudly, he taps the ground nearby. Once, that's all it takes. The labor is backbreaking, not figuratively. Tharon's uncle, Timos, walks hunched, because a basket overloaded with wheat broke something in his spine. He now picks stones from the path and thanks the gods for still having fingers. When the olives are crushed, Tharon moves to the press. The stone wheels groan as they turn, and the oil oozes into clay basins, thick and golden. None of it is for him. Helots live on gruel and onions, sometimes barley, meat maybe if a goat dies of old age. But food isn't the real hunger. It's the freedom to speak that gnaws most. Irene teaches Tharon to dye cloth with meaning. Saffron means mourning, indigo means birth. Crushed murex shell, too rare to use, means resistance. Only once has she used that. She stitched it into the hem of a burial shroud. The Spartan who wore it never knew. Their hut is simple, stone, one room for sleep, one for everything else. The loom sits near the door so Irene can hear if anyone approaches. She hums as she weaves, never songs with words. Words can betray. Amyclae is not a prison, but no one leaves. The Krypteia ensures that. They wear no armor, move at night, kill without warning. They don't need reasons. Tharon has seen them once. 3 figures in dark cloaks, standing at the edge of a field while a family wept beside a newly dug hole. Children learn to recognize them early. Mnasippos teaches them riddles. A wolf with 3 eyes walks at night, 1 for seeing, 2 for lies. If he stops to ask your name, hide it deep and play the game. Helot culture survives in fragments, not in temples, but in hands, weaving, planting, shaping, scratching coded signs under loose bricks and carved into walking sticks. Some old men walk with canes etched in Messenian script, long forbidden. If asked, they say it's decoration. If not asked, they say nothing. Tharon sees Doros again one afternoon. He's older now, taller. The red cloak draped across his shoulders doesn't quite fit. His hair is oiled, cut in the Spartan fashion, cropped at the forehead, long at the back. His face is unreadable. They pass each other near the olive press. Tharon bows his head, a reflex, a safety. Doros says nothing. He does not smile, but as he walks by, he extends the wooden staff and lightly taps Tharon's shoulder. Once, it's not violence, but it is a message. I can touch you, I can hurt you. I did not. Today. Later that evening, Tharon eats beside the fire with his mother. A thin stew bubbles in a cracked pot. They sit in silence, the heat soothing but not satisfying. When she finishes her meal, Irene opens a box and takes out a strip of cloth dyed red, not Spartan crimson, but deeper, almost brown. "This," she says, "was your grandfather's. From before." "Before what?" "Before Sparta made us forget." She doesn't say more. She doesn't have to. The trials of blood and breath. Tharon wakes in darkness, not the soft dark of pre-dawn, but a deeper black, the kind that settles into your chest before it lifts from your eyes. The village is hushed, no dogs bark, no footsteps stir. This silence in Amiklai is a message. The Krypteia are walking. It begins the same every year. A new crop of Spartan boys comes of age, and to become men they must kill, but not in battle. That will come later. First, they must learn what it means to wield sanctioned terror. They are ordered into the countryside, armed not with swords, but with silence, and told to thin the Helot stock. No names, no trials, no reason. It is a ritual wrapped in ideology. Spartan elders call it a necessity, to remind the Helots who holds the knife. But to Tharon and his kin, it is something far older, the culling. That morning, Tharon's mother binds his arm with a strip of dyed cloth, saffron yellow, dull from age. "Your uncle wore this," she says. "It didn't stop them, but it helped me find his body." By midday, the sun is cruel. Tharon is ordered to assist in clearing stones from the path near the grain storehouse, an exposed position. He works slowly, deliberately, not to delay, but to remain seen. Helots know. Disappearances happen to those who are alone. Then he sees him, Doros, a boy not so different in age, but draped in the authority of a red cloak. They once played as children, when they were too young to know the lines drawn between them. Now Doros walks like someone who has been told he owns the earth. Behind him trail two other Spartan youths, older, silent, faces like masks. Doros. They don't speak at first, just watch. Tharon pretends not to notice, lifts another stone. His back aches. Sweat runs into his eyes. Then Doros steps forward. "You know who I am?" Tharon nods. "Good," Doros says. "Then you know what this is." He lifts a blade, small. Not the long Xephos of war, but the short dagger of the Krypteia, a blade made for silence. The other Helots stop working. They don't run. Running means guilt. Running means death. Tharon stands still. Doros looks at him, long, hard. There's something unreadable in his gaze. He steps forward, and then, without a word, grabs a different boy from the edge of the field. A quiet boy, younger than Tharon. No history, no name that will be remembered. It happens fast. A grunt, a blur of movement. The boy falls. The silence afterward is immense, like a temple with no gods. Then Doros turns to Tharon. "Pick him up. Take him to the edge. Burn what's left." "It is not mercy. It is a lesson. You live, but only because I said so." Tharon obeys, hands trembling, jaw locked, eyes burning. He carries the body alone. The weight is less than the jars he hauls daily, but it drags at him in another way. That night, Tharon does not return home. He follows the irrigation canal east into the hills where no fields grow. His legs ache. His ears ring. He does not cry. He finds old Nasipos at the abandoned kiln, where the elders sometimes gather to remember. Nasipos does not ask questions. He lights a lamp, offers bread, then says, "You've seen it now. What they do, what they've always done. Tharon's voice is hoarse. Why didn't we stop them? The old man looks away. Because we remember. That's what they fear most. Over the following days, Tharon changes. He works, but his gaze lingers longer. He begins marking things, stones, trees, even clay pots, with subtle notches. Symbols passed on by Mnasypos, not language but memory. He asks about names, about the boy who died, about the revolts that failed, about the ones who vanished. Mnasypos teaches him the name song, a chant spoken in darkness, meant to carry the names of the dead, not to call them back, just to keep them from vanishing. Tharon speaks it alone, one night beneath a fig tree. The breeze carries the words into the olive groves. No one hears, but he speaks them anyway. He's no longer just surviving. He's beginning to remember. Roots beneath the stone. There are no Helot libraries, no carved stelae proclaiming their victories, no temples bearing their names. What survives does so in fragments, in memory, in rhythm, in thread. When Tharon first visits the old kiln, it's empty. A place once used for pottery, now long abandoned. The earth here is scorched black, the fire long gone. But for the Helots, it is still a place of heat, a hidden hearth for stories. Mnasypos waits for him the next night. Sit, he says, without preamble. Before they made us Helots, we were men. You've forgotten. That is not your fault. But now you must remember. He speaks not with grandeur, but with patience, words slow, deliberate, unburdened by hope. He tells Tharon of the first people, the Messenians, whose kings once sat in council, whose warriors fought the Spartans to a standstill, whose lands were not stolen overnight but choked, slowly, by war and policy. We had a word for strength, Mnasypos says. Not bia like the Spartans. We called it sarkion, endurance that roots like a tree. Tharon listens, then returns the next night. And the next. Each visit, Mnasypos gives him something new, a stone, smooth and flat, with a spiral scratched beneath it. The Messenian sign for memory, he explains. A riddle that, when recited backward, becomes a prayer to lost gods. A name, Aristomenes, the Helot general who led the last great revolt, whose body was never found, whose grave no Spartan could ever claim. They call him myth, the old man says, because they're afraid he's truth. At home, Tharon watches his mother's weaving with new eyes. What he once thought decorative, he now reads as language. A double row of knotted black threads means famine. A crosshatch in sea blue, safe passage. A trailing loop of red nearly hidden in the hem. Vengeance held, not spoken. Irene never confirms, she never denies, but one evening she hands him a spindle wrapped in ochre-dyed linen. Says nothing, walks away. In the fields, he sees it elsewhere. A young girl braiding 3 stalks of wheat and burying them under a tree. An elder tapping 3 times on a stone gate before passing through. A song hummed by the women while pounding grain, no lyrics, but rising in tones every 3rd beat, an echo of an old war rhythm. These aren't acts of faith, they're acts of survival. Cultural shards, embedded in daily life, too small for Spartan notice, too vital to be forgotten. Then one day something shifts. A child dies, not from violence, not this time, but from a fever brought on by spoiled water. The family mourns as best they can, but Mnasypos gathers the elders quietly that night. Tharon is invited. He walks the old orchard path under a moonless sky. Lanterns are shuttered, voices low, and in a ring of olive trees they begin to sing. This is no hymn of Olympus, no praise to Ares or Apollo. It is a name song. The child's name spoken once by each person, followed by a memory, however small, a word he mispronounced, a pebble he once gave, a laugh that came in the rain. Then silence. Then the name again. It is not a ceremony of grief, it is one of preservation. They take everything, Mnasypos whispers. We give back the only thing they can't hold, memory. This is the Helot religion, not gods above, not temples of stone. It is the belief that to speak a name is to resist oblivion, that to carve a mark into the underside of a wine jug is to declare you were here, and you knew joy and pain and names that mattered. Tharon begins to scratch the spiral symbol beneath his sleeping mat, not for anyone else, just to say, I remember. The Spartans worship their gods with pomp, with choruses, processions, and temple rites watched by elders and warriors alike. Their gods walk in marble, demand sacrifice, and whisper to generals. But the Helots worship differently. They worship in shadows, in gesture, in small things left in hidden places. Mnasippos takes Tharon one night to the edge of Taygetus, the mountain that looms over the valley like a judgment. They do not climb far, just enough to leave the fields behind. There's a grove there, nearly forgotten, overgrown, bramble-wrapped and useless to Spartan agriculture. But once, long ago, it was a sacred space to a god with no face and no altar, just a stone with 7 circles carved into its side. This is Eleutherion, the old man says, the one who hears, not the god of war, not of justice, but of release. The Helots come here, not to beg, but to speak. Each visitor brings a whisper, a single truth carved into a scrap of wood or etched into a stone, then buried. Tharon brings none his first time, only silence. Mnasippos tells him, that counts too. We learn of other customs, slowly, pieced together like pottery shards. Children are named twice, once at birth, once in secret by their grandmothers. The second name is never spoken aloud, except in dreams or death. Certain vines near the grain fields are never trimmed. They grow wild, curling along fences. These are believed to be watchers, spirits of ancestors who refused Spartan chains. A game the children play with stones, where each smooth rock is a person, thrown, caught, balanced. It looks like nothing, but each move is a coded reference to a past revolt. Taught not for fun, but so the memory lives. Tharon becomes a keeper of these fragments. He doesn't lead, he doesn't teach. He just remembers, and in remembering begins to collect. He keeps a chipped piece of clay with spiral etchings from the old kiln floor, a woven scrap with a near-invisible knot pattern of triangles, a broken spindle wrapped in red thread once used by his mother. To any Spartan, it's junk, but to Tharon, it's a library. Irene grows quieter during this time. Her hands shake more. She weaves less. One evening, without explanation, she hands Tharon a pouch. Inside, a tiny carved bone figure, headless, worn smooth by handling. This is her, she says. My mother. My memory of her. He nods, says nothing. They sit together for a long time, the fire burning low. It is the only inheritance she can give him. As solstice approaches, the village prepares its standard tribute, grain, linen, olives, for Spartan collection. But Tharon, Mnasippos, and 3 others prepare something else. A Nama song ceremony, deeper and older than any tribute. It will not challenge Sparta. It will not disrupt anything. It is not rebellion, but it is resistance. On the longest night of the year, beneath a waning moon, they gather in the abandoned threshing circle, an open field flattened long ago by generations of wheat harvests. They bring no torches, only slow, rhythmic clapping. Then the song, voiceless at first, hummed. Then Aristomenes, Kaliandra, Timos, Hylas. Each name carries a life. Each life becomes a stone laid in a circle. By the end, they formed a ring. No speeches, no declarations, just names and breath and silence. Tharon places the carved bone figure of his grandmother in the center. His mother watches from the tree line, her face unreadable. Her presence, everything. They stay until dawn, then scatter before the Spartans begin their rounds. Then, this is what survived. Not because it was allowed, not because it was strong, but because it was buried deep enough to root. Tharon no longer asks what it means to resist. He understands now that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is remember out loud. The shadow of the shield. Sparta is often imagined in absolutes: discipline, brotherhood, war. But those who live beneath it, who carry its weight, know it as something else. Layers. One law for the rulers, another for the ruled. One kind of silence for the warrior, another deeper silence for the Helot. The Agoge, Sparta's legendary training school, exists just a ridge away from Amyclae. Its songs reach the fields. Boys in red cloaks chant while running, striking at each other with wooden staffs. They sing of Thermopylae, of Heracles, of dying with your shield or on it. The verses ring loud, proud. But Tharon hears something else: the cracks in the rhythm, the hesitation in a name. He sees Doros again, older, sharper. The knife of youth has become a sword of manhood, but his gaze wavers now. Doros has killed, has obeyed, has risen. And yet, when their eyes meet across the path, the look he gives Tharon is not dominance. It is searching. Sparta depends on hierarchy. Without Helots, there is no bread, no oil, no time for war games or speeches. The entire Spartan ideal rests on the quiet labor of those they refuse to see. Once a year, the ephors, the 5 magistrates of Sparta, meet in private to discuss population balance. They do not use the word genocide. They use terms like stability, harmony, ritual. In these meetings, Lysanias often speaks. Lysanias, commander of the Krypteia, is no orator. He's lean, weathered, with a voice like dry leaves. He believes in order, in Sparta as an organism, and Helots to him are a kind of bloodletting. If we let them feel too safe, he says, they will remember they were once men. He does not hate Helots. That would suggest they matter. He simply knows their place. One day, Tharon is caught, not for speaking, not for violence, for carving. A simple spiral, etched under a cart axle. A child noticed, told their father, the steward reported it, and now Tharon stands in the public square, flanked by guards, before a small crowd of citizens and silent Helots. Doros is there. He does not speak. Lysanias steps forward, holds up the carved wood. "This is not a crime," he says. "It is confusion. This boy thinks himself important. He is not. Let us remind him." They don't kill Tharon. That would elevate him. They beat him, publicly but without spectacle. Long enough to break ribs. Not long enough to stop his breath. The message is clear. You may endure, but never rise. Later, when he wakes, he is alone, but not for long. Irene comes. She does not weep, does not speak. She places a piece of cloth in his hand, dyed deep indigo, the shade used for birth. "You lived," she says, then walks away. In the weeks that follow, Tharon does not return to the fields. He walks slower now. He breathes with difficulty, but he still remembers. Doros visits once, alone, late. They sit in silence. No apology, no justification. Then Doros asks, "What were you carving?" Tharon doesn't answer. Instead he asks, "Do you know how many paces it is to the cistern?" Doros blinks, shakes his head. "Exactly," Tharon whispers. "You don't know anything." Doros leaves, nothing resolved. But Tharon knows he will carry that moment like a stone. Years pass, and Sparta, like all empires, does what empires do. It marches, it bleeds, it brags, it forgets. The wars shift, first against Athens, then Thebes, then shadows of itself. Glory thins into myth. But Amyclae does not change. Here the soil still clings to bare feet. The bread is still coarse. The work still begins before the sun. And the Helots, those nameless thousands upon whom Sparta once built its greatness, they still bow their heads to the grain. But not all heads are bowed the same way. Among the Helots now walk people who remember differently. not out of nostalgia. Out of duty, they are the keepers, born of silence, but trained to listen, raised under threat, but shaped by lineage. Their defiance is not shouted. It is etched into walls, into cloth, into the minds of their children. Tharon is older now. His back is bent, not from the whip, but from years of lifting burdens the world never saw. His son, Nicomedes, asks him one day, "Why count the steps to the cistern?" Tharon could say, "To measure distance." He could say, "To avoid getting lost." But instead he says, "Because there may come a day when you can't walk it, and you'll need to know it anyway." Each pace is a ritual now, not of submission, but of awareness. The ground remembers. The boy learns. They kneel together beside the fig tree. Tharon teaches his son to scratch the spiral, softly where the stone meets soil, where weather won't erase it too soon. "We don't do this to fight," he tells him. "We do this to leave a trail, in case they forget we were ever here." And every dusk, before the stars emerge, they hum the Nam song, voice low, barely a thread, just enough for the breeze to carry it. They don't sing it to mourn the dead. They sing it so the dead will never have to mourn being forgotten. Far away, across the river that divides the Spartan quarters from the fields, Doros sits in a marble chamber that echoes too much. The other men speak with confidence, as Spartans do, but their eyes look older now, hollowed. The wars have taken more than enemies. A name comes up, a Helot accused of gathering others at night, of retelling the story of Aristomenes, the first rebel, the unburied one. An elder leans forward. Do we punish him? All eyes turn to Doros, and for a moment he sees two paths, one where he obeys, where he nods and the wheels of order grind forward as they always have, and another, quieter, lonelier path, one where his voice might mean nothing, but might still mean something. He swallows. "No," he says, "let it go." No one applauds, no one argues. The others shrug, move on. But Doros does not. That night, in his private quarters, he unrolls a scrap of cloth, one that he confiscated years ago, never returned. On its edge, barely visible, a spiral, burned into the thread. He runs his finger over it, once, then again. There is no revolt, there is no banner, no uprising, no fire in the square, but there is this: a boy who knows the names of the dead, a father who still hums when he weaves, a warrior who remembers a silence too long endured, and a spiral hidden under a stone that waits to be found. This is not freedom, not yet, but it is a seed, and even in scorched soil, seeds remember how to grow. The spiral beneath the shield. There is a kind of silence that ends things, and another kind that waits. The story of Tharon never entered Spartan scrolls. No sculptor carved his likeness. No poet sang his name before kings. But among the Helots, he became something else, not a rebel, not a saint, a pattern. In the decades that followed, strangers began to notice the spirals. On the inside of amphorae lids, carved into the underside of stone lintels, etched in olive pits, tossed beside empty fields, always the same curve, always in places a Spartan would never look, and always followed by something else, a change in breath, a pause in rhythm, a whisper in the name-song that held one more name than the year before. Doros retired early, quietly, without ceremony. He died with no sons, but the scrolls record that he left land to a Helot family, the first act of its kind. No one knows why. No one asks. In Amyclae, the fig tree outlived Tharon. And one morning, long after the last war, a Spartan patrol found something strange on a winter walk. A gathering of Helot children, no adults in sight, standing in a circle, eyes closed, palms open, whispering a name again and again in the frost. The officer called it a game and passed on. But the seed had broken open. Somewhere in the soil of memory, something was taking root, Not rage, not vengeance, something quieter, stronger, a memory that refused to stay buried. So now, imagine a cracked wall in an abandoned Spartan barracks, faded red paint, crumbling plaster, and beneath it, just barely visible, etched deep into the stone, protected by time and dust, a spiral, and below it, in letters barely formed, we remember. History rarely remembers those who had no voice, but here we do. If Tharon's story moved you, if you believe the lives of the forgotten shape the world as much as those of kings, then join us. Subscribe to Chronicle of the Common. Leave a comment with the names and stories you think deserve to be heard. And above all, keep remembering, because sometimes memory is resistance.